Good evening, everyone. I'm just trying to do a head count on how many AdCom members are present. So give me a second. One. Thanks, Dan. Okay, I think we have almost everyone tonight, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Brian and Sharon will not be joining us tonight, but we have quorum for AdCom. So I just want to welcome the school committee members. I could see a few names. I want to welcome Dr. Bedos, Bill Yugner, and I believe a few other people. If I didn't welcome you, I'm sorry. But no, Allison, yeah. So, okay. First thing on the agenda is the approval of
Larry.
Yeah. Hi,
I'm sorry to interject. Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
You don't call your meeting to order. Sorry.
Rob, I see Rob is on here. So he's our assistant chair and he is our vice chair and he's going to call our meeting to order. Right, Rob?
I am. Thank you. I was not paying attention. I apologize. So I would like to call to order the school committee meeting for this evening. Tina, would you like to second that?
I would absolutely second it.
Thank you. And I can't see who else is on. Do we need to do a roll call vote on that?
I see Brent is on with us at all. So it couldn't hurt to do a roll call vote. And
okay. So Brent.
Aye.
Tina.
Aye.
And Rob is an aye. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Rob. I forgot about you guys calling your meeting to order.
Wow.
I got too excited. I got too excited to start the meeting. So sorry.
It's okay, Larry. I like to cross my T's and dot my I's.
I know. That's good.
All
okay, we're good now. The AdCom is good. So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of prior minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I second it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I had the one correction on street lighting where there was an erroneous date. 2020 should be 2016.
Okay, Jack, I already made that change.
You made that, okay.
Yeah, and I believe John Mahoney sent an email earlier today to everyone, and I don't see him on yet, so I'm just going to recap. One is the order of the time. 7:40 was posted. It was out of order, so I moved it. And then the second one was the minor correction to scatter, SCADA, and I think it was spelled SKATA something. So I made those changes. And I see John Mahoney just signed on. Hi, John.
Hello.
Hi. So I just told the AdCom the changes you gave us. We made the changes. And then Jack had a comment. So any further discussion on the minutes as presented? Okay, if not, we're gonna do a roll call. I'm gonna call out the names. Bernard?
Present.
Okay. To approve the minutes, Bernard. Okay. Jack?
Yes, on my side.
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Paul, I know I saw your text about no audio, so if you can wave, that's fine too. Paul? Okay, I don't see. Okay. Dennis?
Yes.
Okay. Tom? Okay. John Mahoney, minutes?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And myself, aye. So I believe we have 9-0-0 at this point for the minutes. Okay, first thing on the agenda is the school committee. And tonight we have Bill Yugner, Dr. Bedos, Allison, and a majority of the school committee members present. So Bill, I'm going to hand this off to you now. Welcome to AdCom, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. We thought what we would do is, I'm not sure that everybody has had a chance to see the presentation that we did. We'd like to just go through it very quickly. We'd like to also then set up the CIP presentation again extremely quickly, and then we can get into any questions you have. And we do have a number of schedules, as you've seen, that we sent out. So that should hopefully fill in some of the gaps that might be there.
Sounds good, Bill. We are, so you know, Dan did forward your presentation to everyone. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'll just start off here as far as our budget. So good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all on Zoom to begin with. Our budget is really, it's our blueprint for continuing to focus on our students and for student achievement. It's our way of how we look to our philosophy, which has always been historically, how can we consistently provide a strong commitment for education to our students? It maintains the high level. I don't know if you want to go down for the next couple of slides, just so we can kind of get the overarching message of the budget. So it maintains a high level of educational services for our students. It's a strong commitment to education is what we've always had, being very student focused. It is reflecting our priorities from our own district strategy for improvement, which includes maintaining reasonable class sizes, preserving our current educational programs, our services for our students, addressing special education and special education related service needs, technology needs, and any of our moves that we have to make based on our changing student population. It's also really importantly focusing on the work that we do as far as our district strategy for improvement, which looks at our curriculum instruction as far as providing everything we need to do to prepare our students for college and career ready so that they are global citizens in the future, and that we're ensuring equity for all. And that looks to making sure that we are responsive to our students' needs, that we are providing what is rigorous as far as their academic programs and what is relevant in today's society. At the same time, providing all the structures for all of our students' needs. We have a diverse population of students in need, and it continues to get more diverse every single year. And then lastly, expanding opportunities for students within our educational programs that are going to meet that rigor, that relevance and responsiveness to students.
So, you know, as typically done, this budget, just quickly, just about 80% of our budget is salaries. So the salary budget itself is built by every individual that we have. And that's, so when you look at each of the individual lines under each building or under the district, you'll see that, you know, how many FTEs. Under our side of it, we see every single person that it represents, what step they're sitting on, what lane they are from if they're a teacher, or, you know, if they're a step, if they're just a, you know, an assistant or a custodian or a bus driver or whatever. The budget assumes that we are going to have retirements during the year. We know of a couple right now, but unfortunately we don't have a requirement that they advise us before our budget process starts, which, as you know, is October, November. So at this point, like I said, we have a couple. The assumption is that we will save $125,000 in retirees. So we take our entire budget, any adds or subtracts, and then subtract 125,000 and hope that we have the 4 to 5 retirements that takes on bringing new people in at a lower step. The grants and the revolving accounts obviously and circuit breaker offset the amount of money that we're asking. So our budget's a full in budget. It's not a net budget of grants, revolving accounts, and circuit breaker. It's everything. And then you see within the budget how much we're actually getting, which is close to $2 million between circuit breaker and grants that we reduced before our balance that we asked the town for. The budget itself is 1.116894 or 2.98%. The selectmen were asking us to do a 2.5%. Our salary budgets alone increasing over year are above that 937,000. As you'll see in part of the presentation as we go, they're up in the 1.1 million range. So unless we eliminated salary positions, unfortunately, our budget just coming forward was going to take us over that amount. That being said, we did cut in our expense areas and did our best to level fund any expenses. And, you know, except for the one thing that we don't have control over really, which is our out-of-district tuitions. And again, we have some breakdowns for that so that we can show you those as well. The budget itself really, to cut to the chase, has only a 0.1 increase, which is in our speech and language teacher. That increase is to meet requirements within IEPs. It's the only reason it's being added. We're not adding a position for any other reason that we did not have enough time with staff to basically cover the requirements under the IEPs. All building level expenses are level funded. And as I said, the tuitions are the only thing that really has an increase in our cost. As noted previously, the one issue we're concerned about, we did cut some of our utility costs again further. But then we've been notified that the solar credits that we're getting were actually being miscalculated in the past couple of years. So the credits that we're going to get not only this year, but next year are going to be lower than what we were getting. So we're a little concerned that the utility budget may have been cut a little too far. I'm still trying to get answers. I know I saw, you know, that one of your members also reached out to try to get answers too. And unfortunately, that's something we haven't been able to kind of lock in yet. But at this point, the school committee is moving forward with the budget as it is, and we'll just have to make do with what we have for funding under the utility cost.
Hey, Bill,
Yep.
real quick. I don't know, I'm following along in the PowerPoint that we have sent out, but your screen is not updating. I'm still on the first page.
Right.
Just FYI. Everyone has the PowerPoint, but I'm still looking at the title slide for your PowerPoint in case you think everyone's following around here.
I'm sorry. I am sorry.
You
I
can
thought-
unshare, maybe unshare and try to share again.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, just so everyone knows, me and Bill reached out to Chris Gallagher to see if we can figure out what the credit situation is for the solar panels, but he's going to look into it and get back to us. So if you have any questions on that, just hold them and hopefully we'll have an answer for you in the coming weeks.
Sounds good. And Bill, while you're trying to maybe set a presentation, as far as the you've clearly mentioned it that this is just salary. Everything else, such as the benefits and pension and so on, are basically totally separate, right? This is just, to your point, just the salary info. Everything, benefits and pension are into another line items, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. No, thank you. I remember it was the same as the prior year, but just maybe to level set everyone. Thank you, Bill.
So
And
go
Bill,
over
we're
to
seeing your
slideshow
screen update now. So if you slideshow,
and then present.
yeah.
It's not,
Yeah, go up to the top where it says slideshow and then do from current slide.
I know, but it's, it's not letting me do it.
Do you want me to share?
Also at the bottom, you can do it. There's a little little screen usually. Yeah, right there, that little screen you were just on next to the minus. Go over 2 more to the right. 1 more. 1 more. Try that one. Your display settings. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, can you all see this now?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sorry. Again, as far as changes, major changes, as we just discussed, 0.1 as far as salaries, level funded as far as expenses, out of district tuition and transportation you'll see some increases. One decrease in the out of district transportation line, because that's actually, we've been doing better there with the contract that we have with the BICO side. Our utility costs, as I said, are down, and we have 3 pending contracts that we haven't even started negotiating yet. They typically are pretty quick. The custodial workers, which represents about 28 staff members, the maintenance, which represents 4, and crossing guards, which is about 5 members. We did carry, and we do carry, a small COLA percentage in our base to cover these. But that's it. All of our major contracts will come up next year as far as negotiations. When you look at the changes overall, as far as what our major cost changes are, we have almost $189,000 in tuition increases. That represents just about a 5% increase to each of the tuition groupings that we're out on. Unfortunately, what we've been seeing is the state is the one who approves these contract increases for tuitions on out-of-district placements. And 5% is actually one of the lower numbers we've seen. And there's no guarantee with the 35 placements we have that we're going to see that number. Last year, we had 1 placement receive a 50% increase in the middle of the year. So we're hoping that this is a good number over that 35 grouping, but we're a little concerned about that. Obviously, with the amount of technology that we've added this year to be in the one-to-one situation, our licensing is going up significantly. And quite honestly, the 20,000 will barely, if it does cover, will barely cover what we're seeing as far as total cost. We've dropped our utility costs because of the solar savings by 90,000. It's been a steady drop over the last couple of years as we've kind of honed in on what we're going. But again, we're a little concerned on that. Custodial supplies, we have been trending up over the last couple of years before COVID. I guess that's another point I should make. The budget does not have funding in it for COVID-related expenses continuing in FY22. The anticipation is that we would be back to a normal year budgeting-wise. Obviously, small amounts of cleaning items and stuff like that we can cover, but beyond that, we don't have the large PPE costs that we're incurring all of this year in the budget. Our heating fuel is, we've been running a little higher because the rates have gone up a couple points as far as our contract. And then we share a Medco coordinator between us and Walpole, and that would be basically because she's not on our salary, she's on Walpole's salary, we pay an actual expense line to Walpole to cover our share of her salary. So basically about $91,000 adjustment expenses, almost double that is just in out-of-district tuitions. We always kind of show you a trend of what we've been and where we've been over the last number of years. And as you can see in this thing, the $1,116,000 representing the 2.98 is one of the lower percentages we've had in the last couple of years. Again, our salaries are heavily driven based on the contracts that we have. All of the contracts that were negotiated 3 years ago are basically 2% increase in COLA to the line items of their individual contracts. But again, some people not only get a COLA, they get a step, and if they've gotten met additional educational requirements, they'll also get a lane change too. So it's not strictly COLA that drives our salary budget.
Bill, Dennis Keefe.
Yep.
What's the average of the step increase in the budget?
So, well, an average step increase is 4%. An average lane increase is 4%, and the COLA is 2%. So, as you're going to see, and later on, about 66% of our employees are on top step, top lane, so they're getting COLA. It's the younger teachers that have just come out of college and stuff that are still moving steps and lanes that get higher increases than the rest of them. But the majority of your staff is basically just COLA.
Okay.
Enrollments, this is going to be a tricky one. One of the things we're a little concerned about is that we believe possibly parents held kids out of kindergarten this year based on the year that they knew we were facing. It could push our kindergarten numbers a little higher for next year than we typically would see. And again, we know that it's hard this year to even count really where we are. We have kids that are out of district full-time at Tech and Greenfield. We have those accounted for. We obviously have the people within our town, and we know of a slight population increase. So what we're seeing right now is a slight increase going forward to next year, but again, nothing that's changing any of our structure internally as far as teaching positions or staffing. This is a snapshot of the entire change. So as I said before, $1,060,000 is strictly our salary side of things. 91,000 is the offset. Before offsets is the expense side. And when you look down below, those are the items that we just talked about. Those are your major increases. But the bottom section, the 104,000, we're actually receiving 104,000 more from the state for circuit breaker, which is a relief fund for out of district sped cost. And we're getting about 70,000 less in the grants and revolving. Almost all of that is on the revolving side. Our revolving accounts are like our extended day revolving, which is a fund that's not paid by the town. It's paid by taxpayers using that service. It's, adult education. It's all these. We are getting hit with those accounts getting wiped out, trying to cover the services this year because they're not getting the population that they typically would get. So they don't have as much money to put into what we would normally charge them for as far as utilities and stuff in our normal budget. The hope is obviously next year it comes back to somewhat normal. Those accounts can then pick back that 104,000 back up the following year. But right now, some of them are actually running in the red, and we're having an issue that basically they can't run in the red. So taking more money from them is just not going to work. The offsets, as I said, it's made up of 3 different things. This is money that's not coming from the town. It's coming from either state and federal grants, circuit breaker, as I just said, which was our help relative to special placements for out of district, and the revolving accounts. So you can see the revolving accounts is taking the biggest hit here. And again, it's because the programs virtually aren't running to the level. We didn't run adult ed this year, so they're not going to have any revenue coming in to put money in to pay for electricity and stuff on our side, not that they're using it either. Same thing with extended days, running about 1/3 of what they typically would run. Food service, which is not in our budget at all, to give you an idea of a problem we're facing, basically is running in the red by about $70,000 this year. Under federal law, they can't run in the red. We as a school district have to make up that difference. So that's a pressure point for us, but it's all because we don't have students in full time. Therefore, we don't have the population of customer base for them, even though they have expenses in which they're incurring. So this is actually very, very similar to the last 3 or 4 years. Slight uptick in the special education. I believe last year was like 28.46. So and other than that, the percentages as far as the small ones are really consistent. The difference came really out of regular instruction as far as where the money had to come from. So as you can see, our budget is pretty well spread relative to general instruction, but the special ed is an area that we obviously continue to work on as far as how we manage that cost. And the best way to manage the cost, obviously, is to be able to support the kids within the district and not have them be placed outside. We do have a lot of special programs, and we have a number of kids, far more kids in the district than we have out of district that we run programs for internally. But there are cases in which they are kind of one-offs, and there's no way to run a program for a single kid cost effectively. So, and to have the right talent to basically do that as well. Our process steps, basically, as you know, administration puts together the budget with staffing. We go through with the town and verify what revenues are out there and how the revenue stream looks. School committee subcommittee meets with us to go through it. We obviously reviewed almost 3 times, I guess maybe 4 times with the school committee this year, the budget itself. And obviously we're here with you today as that step goes. So that's basically our presentation. And like I said, I'm going to quickly do the can you see this one?
You have to stop sharing and then you have to reshare.
Really? Okay. And then reshare.
It sounds like you're talking to our children from years ago. You have
Yeah.
to stop sharing, and now you have to reshare.
But no, we tried to get our kids to share. That was the problem. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So the top yellow section is what we requested last year. You can see the request column was a total of 558,000. Majority of it was in technology and buses. There was 3 buses that we requested, about $240,000. We received 1, and that was the minibus, which quite honestly, DOT had said that the bus that we were taking out of service, they would not allow us to relicense. The computer software, not that we knew we were going into the adventure we did with buying one-to-ones, but we felt that if we had to, that was one area for 1 year we could pull back by the $100,000. But we had to have something because we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure that backs up all the computers that we have that also needs to be updated. Obviously, we have copiers throughout the district, and I sent out some sheets on that so you could see those. And we had music equipment, and none of those were supported. So 182,000, basically 1 bus and a computer equipment. Our request for next year is basically we're okay with the $100,000 for next year just because of the amount of money that we were able to get through grants to pump into technology this year. But after that, we will be back into a normal cycle because of storage, infrastructure, and starting to build towards a replacement of the new technology we're putting in. The bus issue is huge, guys. So, and I warned, the town side about this last year, and I'm just going to tell you why I'm so concerned about it. Our program to run our own buses for the district saves this town a significant amount of money. We pay less money for fuel because we don't have to pay the fuel tax, which any vendor that we would hire has to pay. We don't have to make a profit like any vendor is anticipating doing. Our insurances are cheaper than private parties because, again, we have a municipal pool that we're shared across. So for us, the importance of keeping buses online is that we're not going to a third party to pay for those bus routes. Right now we're 2 down. We're going to be, if we had an issue this year and didn't get funded again, we would literally be at a point where I would have to go out and start hiring for individual bus routes, a third party to do that, which will cost this town more money over time than going this route with replacing buses. So I realize times are tight. I realize how critical it is financially for the town to put together an appropriate budget that's balanced. But this is a key item that people have to remember. You can't just slough this off and say we're going to pick it up. We were able to do it for 1 year, and it's going to be painful at the end of this year if we don't have at least the replacements of the ones that we were missing last year, plus a start towards this year. So I think that's kind of critical. We don't need a minibus this year. Minibuses we typically buy every 3rd year. We run 4 frontline minibuses daily, and 1 is a handicap bus with a chairlift, which we bought just a couple years ago. So we're in good shape with that, and we're okay with the one that we ended up buying this year. So we're okay there. You're going to see in the list that I gave you, there's probably 6 copiers right now. 1 that's totally out of service, which services our high school guidance counseling center, which is basically a specialty machine. It's a trifold copier, which allows us to basically send out parent information. Obviously you used to do report cards and stuff like that as well, which we don't typically send out that way, but most of our mailing stuff is actually coming out of that machine. It's dead right now. It's a $13,000 machine by itself. It's one of our most expensive machines to have that trifold capability. The music department put together last year a request for a 3-year program to start replacing some of its instruments, which are 20 to 25 years old. Many are at the point from a repair point of view that they can't repair them. And so they've been sidelined. Obviously, I think they've done a great job over the years repairing equipment as it comes back and keeping it in the front line. But, that this is, I think, a thoughtful plan on their side to say we know it's going to be tough to do something in 1 year, but if we could do it over a period of years, even if it's not every other, every year, it's every other year, something that just gets the worst of the equipment replaced. So, quickly, I'll go back and just show you, when you look at the buses, did that come up on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the yellow ones are the ones that we're looking to replace. The typical rule is, 10 years or 100,000 miles or a combination thereof. And as you can see, we've got 5 2011 buses. The problem with buses in New England is they are actually not as well built underneath as a car is as far as rust proofing and stuff. So they take some heavy, damage to rust. 2 of these, one has a cracked engine block, which is one, again, we hope to have replaced this year. And the other one has significant frame rust. So those 2 are our biggest has to go type scenarios. And then we've got a couple others that will be at 100,000 by the end of the year. So that's kind of my concern there. The green lines that you see there are all the frontline buses that are servicing us every single day. So those are on the road every morning and every afternoon. The reason we have additional buses, I'm sure, as you can imagine, when we're running field trips, we need to have that capability, even though we're still servicing the ins and outs for schools. We also have buses that are, continually coming in for whether it's oil changes, brake changes, whatever. So we need to be able to put other buses back out on the road. And we found this number of buses really gives us that flexibility, but also, that protection when a bus does go down. Yes, Tom?
I know last year, I believe, when we were heading into this whole COVID predictions, police had wanted like 3 or 4 cars. We asked them to ask for 1 less and extend out another year for extending what they wanted. I was wondering if was that an option you thought about? Is there 3 for the next 2 years each, or as opposed to 4 in 1 year?
That's definitely a possibility. We would, if that's where the case, we'd make it work if we had to. I just don't want the town to think that they can, if they take that conscious plan and they said that's how we're going to do it, I'd feel comfortable with that. But if it's like we're going to give you 3 this year and we're only going to give you 1 or 2 next year, you're just going to dig that same hole. So the 3 probably would be close, but I think we could possibly get through with it. But that's about as far as you can go down before you really, again, you're continuing the problem. So that's an option.
I have 2 questions on these. Is there any local people we can hire to kind of reinforce the bottom so that they don't get as much salt and damage? And what's the resale value of any of the ones that are going to come off use?
So the amount of money we ask for is based on an anticipated trade-in value of between $6,000 and $8,000. Typically, these all go south of the border down to Mexico. But as far as reinforcing the bottoms, the answer really is no, because when you look at the way they're done, they do get a rust proofing coating, but it's a huge metal surface that gets a lot of, chipping and stuff like that. And that's what creates the problem. Also the DOT is just not excited about having any bus on the road that has 100,000 miles or that's over 10 years old. And they're very quick to reject something for even minor issues once it gets into that range, which is understandable. I don't think any of you want your kids on a bus that has any kind of a concern that way either. Mini buses are on the bottom section of this. Again, the 4 bottom ones are our frontline dailies. You can see our 2 used ones. The bottom one, it says DPWs. That was, they gave us, or were not willing to give us much of a trade because it was in such bad shape. So we felt that it was better that the town actually auctioned it off at one of their auctions. They would get more money than they were offering us on a trade. It will go back into the general fund, which is fine, but we just felt that it wasn't worth, the town was kind of going to get, next to nothing for the one. And I think they would do better just on scrap metal value, if nothing else. So that's why that was there. So the top two, as you can see, 2010, which will now be 11 years old at almost 90,000, and a 2014 that's got 101,000 on it already. There are backups right now that we use when one of the top front ones goes in for service. But again, that's the minibus routes that we have. Copiers, again, we do these kind of by school, but the top one is the one I was talking to you about. It's $16,000 to replace that copier. It gets heavy use. As you can see right now, this one has just about 1.4 million copies on it. It's not a big one. It's not like the one that we have in the media center at the high school, which is designed to go between 2.5 and 3 million, and it's going to be just over 2.5 million before this year is over. Those two are too expensive machines. The rest of the machines are, anywhere from $7,500 to $9,000, depending on what we can get on a trade for the older machine. We don't really usually get much. $500-600 is kind of a max. Sometimes they won't even give us that. But so those are the 5 yellow ones right now, which if you just do the quick math on them, obviously it's way more than the 40,000 I'm asking for, but I'm trying to just be reasonable and continue the way we used to do things and just try to make things work for as long as I can. Even with the COVID environment, in 1 year, we did 3.7 million copies to students and doing our programs. And the music program, these were the items that they put together as a list of their worst, conditioned equipment that needs to be replaced. And you can see none of this equipment's really that cheap, relative to the kids using it. Obviously, you're not going to have a lot of people that are able to just go out and buy a $9,500, tuba and to go through the process. So again, the program has been a phenomenal program, a success program for the town and for the schools. But it is based on having the equipment to do that. So this is their list, as I said, for their highest priorities.
What's the lifespan of a tuba?
These are like 25 years old. I don't think that's the lifespan. I think that's how far we were able to get them. I might say the lifespan, typically is around 15 to 18 years.
Question
Good
on
repair.
as I recall last year's discussion, every student has their own instruments, and these instruments are used in case a student wanted to learn a second instrument. Is that the correct case, or are these actually the frontline instruments that our musicians are using?
It's a combination. I think things like the tubas are, most kids do not own their own tuba. So they're the ones who are learning those are using our equipment to do that. And in some cases, yes, it is because someone's learning a second instrument and going through the process that way. But the majority of the equipment that we have is actually equipment that's loaned out to individual players that are playing it. Some of it's just because families can't afford the equipment, period. So, it's different if you're getting a flute, or if you're getting, trumpets, something that's smaller and, a few $100 range. But when you get into some of this other equipment, it's not that typical that kids would get into it.
And that's the biggest piece. They're not going to have those large instruments. If they're playing a French horn and then they're switching to tuba during the different parts of the year, depending on concert season and everything else, students would not own those large instruments. Those have always been school owned. They own their smaller instruments.
What is this for, the whole K through 12, or is this for certain years of students?
We start band in 5th grade and up.
Right. So you can see on the right side, it's it shows the AMS or FHS. So that's either, you can see it's almost 50-50, probably actually a little heavier in the middle school on this list than on the high school as far as number of units, but it's definitely middle school, high school concentration. So
And Bill, many students too. So one of those tubas, and if you guys don't know, I was a music teacher for 11 years and a director of music myself. One tuba might be used by numerous kids in the program. So it could be used by the 5th grader, the 6th grader, the 7th grader, and the 8th grader. It could be used by 2 or 3 players in the high school on different occasions. So some of these large instruments are used by multiple.
Rich, typically what they do is they'd all have their own mouthpieces. That's the kind of the way they build the expense for the family to have it. So that's how they keep it separate.
Exactly. Yeah, it's safe and it's what everyone does.
Okay.
Any further questions for Bill?
So I just quickly want to go over one thing, Larry. So on the screen, can you see a different one now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So this is what I was telling you before. Of our staff, this is showing you the teaching staff is the top chart. And you can see almost 70% are actually a top step on the lanes and steps themselves. So most of our 70% of our staff is getting a COLA increase. The younger ones, as I said, are the ones who are still getting paying for additional education and obviously getting step increases as well. Our ed assistants, which obviously we have a number of, we have 88 of them. You can see just about a third of them are in the top step range as well. Ed assistants only have steps. They do not have lanes. So they don't have an additional education ability they get. And all, their steps are typically, we've gotten them now where the new steps are all 2%. So they're less than the teaching side. Our Sped analysis, again, I think this is an important thing. This is the amount we were talking about relative to out of districts. So our collaboratives, we have 11 kids which are in collaboratives that we belong to. As you can see, they're a more cost-effective program based on other districts having similar kids that they can build a program around. And then we've got, private schools, out-of-state schools. Out-of-state for us is down in Providence. We're not talking that far away, but it's still out-of-state. And then we have a couple kids in residential programs. So you can see that these programs are fairly expensive. If you add on top of that, a good measurement is about $35,000 to $40,000 for transportation per student. Because obviously we're picking them up at their house and we're bringing them to wherever their program is. Just as a kind of a point of information, the top piece here is the money that we've given back to the town since 2013. Again, I think the school department has had a very good track record that we don't spend money for the sake of spending money. If we don't need it, we are definitely ones to want to give it back to the town because we know it comes back around. Last year, because of COVID and because we didn't run a lot of programs and because we were closed down for a period of time, we actually were fortunate to have, generated almost $400,000 to go back to the town that we didn't spend. One of the issues that we know is going to be facing us across the district now is we're going from roughly, about 1,200 computers. We've just added 2,600 on top of that. We will obviously phase out a number of the desktop units and older units, but the 2,600 plus probably another 200 to 300 between office spaces and other areas, so close to 3,000 units are what we now have to support and have licenses for to cover for our students and teachers to be operational. And the $100,000 that we're talking about on computer equipment, this gives you an idea of, we have 2 data centers that we run, one that's at the high school, one that's at the Joint Public Safety Building. We control the data for the entire town and the security for the entire town and the storage for everything that the town operates under. And most of that storage stuff I bought when I first got here about 8 years ago. I think we put most of it in place 6 years ago. It's really coming to the end of its life from a storage point of view. So we've got some big upgrades that we need to do on that. And, obviously, as, access points advance and we can get, faster capabilities out of that. And, the interactive projectors within classrooms, obviously, as they age, we are, continuing to have to upgrade things like that. So that's just your basic. That's not even, these are the items that don't even talk about, what the computers themselves are. So this is where that 100,000 will go pretty quick. And then there's the vehicle count that the district has as far as 22 full-size buses, 6 minibuses, 4 pickup trucks, 2 vans, and a food service vehicle. So one other. So this is just to kind of close the loop on the payroll side of things. This is our payroll budget for the entire district. And we broke it down by the different categories is kind of how we look at things. So whether it's the central administrative areas, our business office, technology, so on, our secretaries, our teachers, our nurses, our librarians, down through our guidance counselors, and then down into the lower sections where you get into all the specialists, and then facilities, transportation, tutors and monitors, and so on. So we're tracking every one of these levels percentage-wise. The reason one, as an example, Ed Assistance looks like it's a very large number. Ed Assistance were making less than minimum wage. In their last contract negotiation, we actually had to eliminate a couple of their lower steps and add a couple steps above that, just so that we would be above the minimum wage level. So that's why it's kind of a one-time adjustment where it's pushing things up. A lot of people that were at the upper level now are moving up again, as well as getting the COLA percent. So that's the reason that one's a much higher than what you would see normally in other areas. We ran into a similar thing with transportation and our tutors. That's why they're up a little. And then typically when you see it in any of the specialty areas, like speech being up, that's because a teacher retires, a new teacher comes in, or we add, a higher qualified teacher, which happens occasionally. So it's really a staffing change. It's not that they're getting an absorbent amount, or it could be a younger teacher that's just moved up on the steps and lane in the given year. Where there's only 5 of them, it doesn't take much to make a change percentage-wise. It's much higher. So I guess my point with everything we just tried to show you, and I know it's a lot very quickly, is that we are absolutely concentrating on every one of our costs, and we understand these costs. There's nothing in any of this information that we're guessing at, we're estimating. We're literally, like I said, when it comes to payrolls, I've got a list of nearly 500 people. Some might be working only, half a, 0.5 or FTE. Some might be working a 0.2. Some are 1.0s, but we know every single one of them, and we know exactly where every single one of them is and what they're doing. And shy of making reductions, as you know, we did last year. We made a number of reductions in the middle school area and a few in the high school. And we were able to do that because we had seen the trend relative to enrollment dropping over a few year period of time, and we were able to make those changes work. We're not in that position this year where we can make additional changes without changing either our offerings at the high school level, meaning the rich AP classes we have and things of that nature, and or just increasing class sizes. And we believe we've been pretty even and fair on what our class sizes are. I think you remember we had last year where we decided to just roll 1 second grade class in, and we had someone set up a town meeting, was very upset with us that the class sizes were going up. We take that on our shoulders. We know that that's our job. We're not worried about that. We do the best we can, and we try to be as equitable across the 3 elementaries as well as the middle and high school as we can as well. We're never going to have one school have classes of 30 and another school have classes of 15. So that's just not the way that the district operates. So I'm open for questions at this point, unless there's something else you'd like to see or talk about.
I'll just lead this off, Bill, real quick. I know Larry likes to make this point every year, but just so a reminder for everyone, we don't vote for individual line items with this budget. We vote for the overall budget costs. And, you know, so if we vote this down, which I mean, after Larry and I scrutinize this pretty good, I'm not recommending. But if we do, you know, vote to pull some money out of here or there, the school department and, you know, obviously everyone here understands that they can move that money around as they need to in order to make things work. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Bill, one thing I thought of while you were giving your presentation is on the line items for attendance, for enrollment. Kindergarten falls under elementary, right? So it goes preschool, then elementary, then middle. Okay, all right. I just wanted to check because we talk about kindergarten and whether we have the, you know, what's for enrollment. I was just wondering where they sit. So they sit in elementary. Okay. And then one final thing, I guess, is I don't know if you want to include this as a line item, but maybe to get Brent some heat because it looks like he's freezing right now.
I'm sitting off in a corner of my house right now.
All right. So that's all I have. And you know, if anybody has any questions for Bill, have at it. Me and Larry, you know, spent probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours with him a week or so ago. So if you get through anything that you forget and you want to reach out to me or Larry later or tomorrow or whatever, we probably have some answers that Bill gave us, you know, from a week ago. So have at it, everyone.
On my side, if I may say so, Amy and Bill extremely well presented. Then I would say that compared to the past year, same thing. Presenting basically the big picture and the overall budget and where pretty much the money goes, and to you know, it gives us an appreciation of basically where to concentrate and where the expenses go, and then going into the details. So again, great presentation, and very much like the prior years, starting with the big picture and going to the details is extremely helpful. So thank you very much.
I think that's the one thing, and I you know, Dan said it well. If there's any questions anybody has, we're kind of an open book. My opinion is first of all, my office is an open door policy. So if somebody has a question, give me a call, come on in, tell me what you're looking for. If I don't have it right at my fingertips, I will definitely put it together and get it to you. But I feel confident enough in the numbers that we put together that I always have something that's backing, you know, every piece of this up. There's virtually nothing in this, as I said at the start of this, that we're estimating or guessing. There's a schedule behind everything. The one, that's why I'm kind of nervous and made the comment I made about the utility costs, because I have a schedule and the schedule's incomplete. I just don't know exactly what's going to happen there. And that makes me nervous. So I operate on having data and having knowledge, not on guessing. So, Tom?
Come on. There we go. Unmute. Okay. Yeah. Once again, very good, Bill. Couple questions. Well, it's pretty much projection analysis here. Are there any COVID-related increases or additions that project to be permanent or ongoing? I know you talked about additional computers and software that needs to be renewed every year, whether or not that'll be, if things get back online and back in class, whether or not that'll be continued, or if they'll be, you know, mothballed until they're actually needed, pull out emergency only, or if that's now an incurred expense that'll be budgeted each and every year. And then are there any things that specific expenses that have been eliminated due to, you know, recognizing now we actually don't need that or don't need to invest in that because of, you know, intense scrutiny on the state to cut costs here?
Well, the ironic thing, Tom, is our biggest savings were because of COVID is in areas that I'm sure parents, you know, aren't going to like to hear, but it was in the sports programs that we couldn't run and things like that. So we weren't paying, you know, for the staffing that did all of those events and stuff. That's where some of our biggest, and our activities that we do for students. As far as actually what we do curriculum wise, COVID or no COVID, that hasn't changed anything. It hasn't changed our curriculum reviews, hasn't changed the materials that we need to have. It increased, as you said, the one-time, the current one-time purchase of computers, but obviously that's going to cycle. and we're going to have to replace those. They will not be mothballed. We are now a one-to-one district, like many other districts in the state, if not all districts at this point. What will happen, as an example, is typically elementary would, or the lower parts of elementary would not take them home if we're full in person and having regular classes. They would stay in the classroom, so therefore they might get a little bit longer life that way. But middle school, high school are going to be taking their computers home. It's going to be part of their learning environment and their curriculum-based program. So everything has actually kind of stretched our budgets, and that's where my comment on the licensing came from, because now we have obviously we have the technology that we don't use Zoom, we use Teams, but that had additional cost. But that gave us new vehicles to basically be able to reach out to kids. Even when we're back full in person, we'll have more ways of getting to kids and being able to help them when they need additional help. So it's advanced us from a curriculum point of view, but it surely hasn't saved us anything. It's mounted cost in almost every direction we go.
Okay, I know. One of the biggest trends of a lot of people really starting to recognize now, especially of being homebound or working from home and stuff, or expanding their electronic environments, is that you can't necessarily buy anything anymore, and you're leasing stuff. And those leases. I mean, with Microsoft, you can't just buy the Office anymore. You're renting it. So I just didn't know whether or not those projections include whether or not there's options to create packages on. Whether or not there's been mandates from the state or anybody or other agencies saying, on behalf of education across the country, you need to cut deals or make some type of a plan for these type of purchasing for purchasing power purposes, or whether or not you're going to be treated just like any of us going into Best Buy or Staples or like that and just buying software. Whether or not there's been protocol set in place to at least administer there's some equity across the country that everybody can have access to this, and maybe some cost structure going forward.
I would say actually we're fortunate in two ways. The large players, the Dells, the Lenovo's, and those guys have programs strictly for schools. We pay a lot less than you pay at Best Buy or anything else like that. The laptops that we put out we didn't go Chromebooks, which are a very stripped down basic computer. We went with true mini computer laptops with full capabilities as far as storage and everything else like that. We paid just a little bit more than what most districts were paying for Chromebooks in doing that, but because of the way the discount structures are. The licensing, again, is huge in that environment. Microsoft has a major education licensing program, which is a fraction, and I mean a fraction, maybe 20% of what it costs you as a consumer to buy the licenses. And what it also gives us is if we put a license for a student on a laptop, they actually have the right to use that same license on other devices that they have while they're within the school district's program. So we actually get huge benefits in that side. And the second part of that whole thing is that I think we are, as a district, extremely fortunate to have Aaron Heyer, who I have never seen anybody who basically takes a state bid and buys for 50% of the state bid. He tears everything apart, and he has structured to make, our data centers alone should have cost us double what we paid for them as a town. So we are fortunate we have a person who truly understands that world. He works with other towns to help them in understanding how to structure their things as well. So we're fortunate. I don't want to say we're the typical town. I think, but I think in a lot of ways, a lot of the benefits we get, every school district gets that most parents and families don't get.
A question for Dr. Berdos. This past year has been, let's say this, we've been the subject, or the district has been the subject of a cruel experiment. But looking back on that, there must have been lessons that you can learn moving forward on either do things more effectively, more efficiently, better. Have you had time to stand back and think about that and make some judgments as to where those improvements might happen?
Well, I think teaching has changed forever because of this. And if you had teachers before that were maybe a little reticent with technology and they would maybe dip their toes in, this has forced them to jump in with both feet. And so that part has really catapulted us forward in the technology world and using technology and increasing digital literacy in a way. So when you think about children reading text and they're reading online, we've always taught how to look at sources and how you're using sources, but now so much of it, it's being forced upon students so much more. So in digital literacy, that is something that has expanded greatly. Collaboration with teachers and students, when we think about all of the options that we haven't really explored so much in the past, or maybe some teachers have, you've had those that are the trailblazers. Now everyone is really looking at ways to be, to your point, more efficient and to think about how we can provide information in different ways too. And so when we think about meeting the needs of students, we can meet those needs in ways that we really hadn't thought about before because we weren't forced to. I think as far as the district staff, I can tell you for sure, it has brought everyone closer together. We've got a really strong culture and climate in this district, and teachers work really, really well together. But because of this, they're working even that much more, and that benefits our students. Having the smaller class sizes and the hybrid model, our teachers are knowing our students, faster in some ways than they ever did before.
Is the so-called digital divide a serious issue in Foxborough among our students?
As far as equity and who has what skills, as far as, the digital divide can mean different things to different people. So tell me a little bit more about what you mean.
Well, we have students who go home and they have computers all around them, and they have grown up with computers.
So equity then.
Others might have nothing like that in the house, in the household, and therefore little exposure.
So going to the equity piece, that's what was really difficult for us last spring when we shut down on March 13th and not being a one-to-one district. We saw that. And then students may have smartphones, but to be able to have computers and access, a lot of people would not believe that we had students that didn't have that. So that's why it was so important for us to go one-to-one and to be able to provide that. And it's been hard in that we ordered those computers last April, and we still do not have our kindergartners with all of their laptops deployed because of the embargo that was placed coming out of China with parts for Lenovo. So it wasn't until December that we were able to start deploying the devices. So we did see that with students and sharing of devices at home. That made it hard for families. And now that they all have their own device, it's definitely made it much better for families. We've also had people really reach out, guidance counselors and administration and teachers, for those that have not had access to do what they can. We've provided hotspots to students if they don't have internet access. If they have not paid their bill and they've lost internet, we've worked with Comcast and families to be able to get them access to.
That's a big one, Jack, because we thought originally your first thought is they don't have a computer at home. Well, they don't have a computer at home. They probably don't have internet at home either. And so just because we give them a computer, you haven't solved the situation. So you take a step forward and then you realize you're taking a half step backwards to figure out how to get them to go forward again. So I think we've learned a lot of different things, and we've learned a lot about this community that maybe we didn't all think were, at the level we are. I mean, we see more often than not, we know what our free and reduced population is in town. Obviously, we live with that. So we know that we have that. But I think a lot of people in this town don't realize that there are a lot of people that are basically at a shortcom when it comes to some of these things.
To what extent do other organizations, for example, our human services or the discretionary fund or other organizations step in to maybe fill in a bit of that gap?
They absolutely do.
Yeah, but they're more the family support when it comes to food, and sometimes it's social services and some things like that. They actually helped. I think was it the JCs that helped us with getting some
donated devices,
donated equipment checked out and out to groups. But when it comes to and they do a lot of support for a lot of these families that you're mentioning, but usually when they're involved on those families, it's really the basics
Fuel
to get the
assistance.
families by. Yes.
It's
exactly.
still your problem.
Yeah.
It's your not problem, it's your responsibility.
Right.
Well, and that's our guidance counselors and our social workers at the upper levels that are working with those families. And when you have a student that comes in and it's cold and they don't have a coat, then it's a matter of looking to some of those other outlets, whether it's through donations or through our partnership with like the discretionary fund, through backpacks and school supplies and coats, those things. And that's when the guidance counselors, adjustment counselors really play such a critical part with our families. And particularly, as you can imagine, during this time with isolation, with the social piece missing, that it's even that much more critical from a mental health standpoint to be able to reach out to see what students and families need and how we can best support them.
And actually, Jack, can I just go back to the first part of your question about efficiencies and lessons that we learned? Just a couple of things that have been positive to come out of this. One of the things is, as Dr. Bertos was talking about with our digital platforms and students submitting work, we've cut down on our paper use. I know we still have a lot of paper, Bill, you covered that in your presentation, but we have cut down on our student paper use. We've also switched to a lot of digital resources in terms of having the heavy, we used to hear the stories about the kids' backpacks being so heavy. We've moved to more digital resources. And one of the benefits of those is that they can be updated in real time. So we have, the up to the minute resources for kids. And one of the hidden benefits that we've really learned from and will continue long after this pandemic is over is doing family events virtually. We really get a much higher level of engagement because people can't always get to the school or the times don't always work. So we have had some efficiencies come out of this. I just wanted to mention those. Sorry to jump in.
One of the social media jokes is you have a kid, if he's in class, he's at least physically there. If he's home, theoretically listening on a class, but could be off in the corner playing a video game. Is that an issue?
Yes, it is. So if we take our Wednesdays when our students are completely remote, as far as middle school and high school students, I should say, if they have their cameras turned off, if you think about, sometimes it's really hard to engage students in a classroom. And now if you have them on a screen and they're keeping their video off and you can't have that interaction, then it's hard to keep them more engaged that way. So that's why we definitely want them more in person.
But maybe that's not an advisory committee issue anyway.
Hey, Bill.
Yep.
Can I ask you a question? Can you talk about the potential fiscal year 21 deficit, and then what are your plans to address it? You can keep it high level, but it's to the benefit of the rest of the committee.
Right. So in the fall, we were fortunate with a lot of the costs that we incurred. Obviously, the computers was the single largest, as far as the being funded by state and federal grants, mostly federal grants. But we also had a significant amount of PPE costs, whether it was cleaning materials, masks, shields, you kind of name it as far as that side went. And we incurred a lot of labor costs because obviously cleaning these buildings during the day on a regular basis, not just at nights, we had to have more of our custodial time to get that done. Our buses, obviously, we had to run to do the program we did on the elementary level where we had every kid in every day, but we split the day in half, meant that we had more bus routes that we had to run to do it. So that was an additional labor cost and fuel cost. So in the fall, we were between the spring and the fall, we received roughly $1.9 million in federal and state grants to cover all those costs. The money was good from when we went out of school last year, basically until December 31st. And the state and federal government put a hard stop on it at that point. On December 29th, they said you can extend it if you'd like to. But obviously, everybody had spent the money as best they could up to the 29th because it was like you had 2 days you were supposed to have waited for. What we did, because we did have a few dollars left over at the end, is we bought more of our PPE product that we knew we were going to need in the second half of the year. And they were willing to let you buy that forward a little, not a lot, at least the original guidance. The second half of the year, basically our biggest two components of cost are the remote learning platforms that we have a number of students on, where parents opted not to bring the kids back into our district for the year, where they wanted to go totally remote. We went with one of the state two of the state programs, either TECA or Greenfield, and that cost alone for the spring is roughly $260,000. The cost for the rest of our staffing changes that we have to cover, and virtually no PPE, because we think we have enough to get us through the rest of this year, is about another close to $310,000. We have two grants that we've just recently been notified of. One is the Esser Grant, which we received in the fall, but this time it's going to be a lot larger. It was $86,000 in the fall. It's going to be about $330,000 in the spring. We also just got notification of another state grant, which is going to generate about $90,000. So we're looking at costs right now of somewhere between $550,000, maybe just north of that, with two grants that will cover everything except for about $130,000 to $150,000. So we're getting close. We were, obviously a little while ago, we were $550,000 we were looking for. So we're not looking for that. At that number, as tough as it may be, we're hoping that with some, depending on what happens with sports and stuff like that, there may be some money that we can cover some of those costs with. And the likelihood is that between now and the end of the year, either there will be another round of grants that comes out, or FEMA may come out with additional grants on their side, which they did in the fall as well. So we think we've been pretty lucky at basically being able to pick up any of these grants as soon as they come out and attaching them to these one-time costs, if you will. So I think we're okay there, Larry.
Bill, that's definitely good news, because it was much higher the last time we spoke.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned earlier that's a $70,000 deficit in the food service. Is
Yep.
that included in this number, or that's in addition?
No, that's an addition. And they're doing everything they can right now as far as trying to build the amount of meals that they're putting out. They are getting paid by the federal side. As you know, all meals to all students are free this year based on federal guidance. The federal government is actually paying for the meals at a slightly higher rate than we normally would charge, which is the way it's always been. But again, the problem is, if you think about a cohort A is in on Monday, that's half the kids.
Yeah.
So even if they all ate, we're only feeding half of them. Yeah. And that's true when you go throughout the entire district. So that's what's hurting them. It's not that their food cost is higher than normal. Actually, they've done a great job maintaining that because of federal grants and stuff. It's really to just do the amount of level that they have to with their labor costs. And again, they are totally self-funded. The only requirement there is if you're going to take federal funds, you can't let them go negative. So that's where the school district knows we're on the hook for that negative balance, depending on where it gets. And maybe we're lucky at some point in the year that we can actually get back in full session, and that would generate more money. So until we get near that end here, and again, if there's a grant, came out, we took 20,000 of it and put it towards food service because it was allowed. So if another grant comes out that allows us to do something similar, we do the same thing again.
Okay. Now, Bill, one last question. Can you talk a little about the potential warrant article? Actually, it's not potential. I think the school committee approved it. The one for the computer reserves, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Can I actually bring up a question? That way you can answer it while you talk. As we talk about this, does equipment other than computers, say a hotspot or whatever, is that included in this? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay.
No. So the warrant article we're asking for, the school committee has approved, basically is to have the ability to have a revolving account to put the money that parents have been giving us towards a protection plan. So this year we're charging $25. Typically in a full year, it would be $35 to $40. What that does is that a parent basically has some peace of mind that if their child were to accidentally step on their computer, drop it down the stairs, pull the plug out of the side, which is really what happens. The biggest damage you can have is really not the kid throwing the computer on the floor. The biggest one is that they have the power cord connected into, they trip over the power cord. It rips the cord unit out of the motherboard, just damages the motherboard. And that's basically the cost of the entire computer by the time you replace the motherboard. So parents, I think, love the fact that for $25, they just bought themselves a little bit of peace of mind. The problem is, as you know, we can't take money from the outside and just put it into line items on our side. So we need some kind of a source to do that. Revolving accounts are a typical thing that are allowed in schools, but this particular one, the federal or state government has not caught up with us yet. I've actually asked 2 legislators to actually write the article to fix it. But so we need to have a local rule, if you will, that allows us to do it. This is very similar to what recreation has, the ambulance revolving account, where basically the money would come in and it would be spent on repairs and parts for those computers, so that when a computer comes in, we'd also have some spares that we can hand out a spare. We can fix it internally. 3 of our people our techs are being trained by Lenovo right now, so that they'll be licensed warranty service techs. And we'll be able to fix the equipment much faster. Plus, there's no third-party argument about, well, what kind of damage was this? And, we're not going to cover it or we're going to cover it. So I think it's a very, it's a normal program. It's just, unfortunately, like I said, the state should already have this in place. It doesn't. So each town has to do it independently. Franklin did this back in 2015 when they went to 1-to-1. So they've had it out there for years. So again, it's just it's a quick article that says that we'll be allowed to have the revolving account. The money will come in to it. We will expend from it just for this purpose only. And we will have the ability to have a max number of $100,000. And that's not a mystery number. That's basically taking 2,600 students and multiplying, mathematically saying at $40 a piece, you're roughly at $100,000 at any given, in total that can run through it.
So, Bill, going forward, every year, the school will be charging about $40 per student if you can afford it.
35 to 40, depending on how we see as our cost.
So my next question is 100,000 too low, or would you rather have a higher cushion?
No, I think based on what we're saying, we know not every parent is going to put in that they run the risk of obviously having to buy the whole computer. Right. But so it's really it's that service fee cost. If someone's buying a new computer, they're just writing us a check for a new computer. It's just like they lost a book.
Yeah.
And they have to buy the new book. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions for Bill or anyone? Dr. Bidders, anyone? Questions?
Tom, go ahead.
Brad Palter.
Okay, sorry, Paul. I noticed on the agenda we don't have the rep from Southeast Regional coming to speak to us. So, William, are you prepared to talk on that one line?
I have no idea. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm just looking at they give the expense from 2019 to 2022 going from 443K to 734K. I just didn't know if we had outside enrollment. Do you know what the enrollment is for Southeast Regional for our town over those 4 years? It's a 66% increase over 3 years. And I just didn't know if that reflects the amount of students that are going over there.
No. We haven't had that big an increase in our
I didn't think so. Yeah.
I think they were able to get a large assessment increase for facility costs, but I thought I had their last invoice here. I know their number from an enrollment point of view really hasn't changed significantly.
Okay. So do you remember what might have been that caused the $200,000 increase from 2020 to 2021? Is that some type of a COVID-related bump up? And would the state allow them to charge extras? Or okay.
Honestly, I don't know because they don't supply any information to us on that. They send an invoice to.
All right. Okay, we'll have to search that some other way. Okay, thank you.
Brad, did you have a question?
Brad Paul, do you have any question? Do you have anything to add?
I did not. No, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Bill or anyone? The school committee? No? No, I think you're good, Bill. Thank you very much for coming. It was a great presentation. It's very detailed. And like Dan said, if we have any questions, one of us will reach out to you, but everything is good. I want to thank Dr. Bedos, Allison for coming. And before I let you go, Rob, I didn't forget about you this time. So I'm going to let you adjourn your meeting.
Actually, Richard's been able to join us, so Richard is the chair, can do that.
Sorry, I didn't even see you, Richard. You're
yeah,
on.
I'm sorry, Larry. I wanted to apologize for coming late to the meeting. I'm sorry
that's okay. Well,
minutes, but thank you for the time, and I want to also thank Bill and Dr. Bertos for their presentation as well. And as you guys know, the detail he offers us for 3 or 4 consecutive meetings is identical to what you're receiving as well too. So we've gone through that with ourselves, and we appreciate you listening to us and hearing us and hearing the presentation again. So on behalf of the school committee, thank you. Anyone move to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second.
Second by Rob. So I'll do a roll call vote quick. Tina?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mr. Freezy guy, Brent?
Aye.
And I as well. Thank you all very much, and good evening.
Good, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
all right, EdCom members, we have a couple of housekeeping items to go through real quick. So next week we have the, I think 6 department heads coming in. And I just had the page on for a second. It's the culture, recreation, and human services. So with the 6 department managers coming in, we might run a few minutes late. So I just want to let you know next week might take a few minutes longer. And do you have anything else anyone would like to discuss? Go ahead.
Well,
Tom.
yeah, based upon that last question, I mean, I can reach out to Steve Uden, who's the rep, I believe, for the town, still with the Southeast Regional. I can reach out to him to get some information. Do we want to ask their director? Because the director used to come out to all of our meetings every year. There was a little presentation as to what was going on over there. And I don't remember him being here last year, and I don't know if he was invited the year before that either. But
well, Tom, what you can do is ask him for the information first. I guess your question is for fiscal year 20 and to fiscal year 21, because that was the big jump, right? 20 to 21.
Right. There was no one there to explain that was coming, and I don't know if that's coming out of our school department budget. We need to know why that's a 60% increase over 2 years.
I think
if the student base is the same.
Tom, if I'm not mistaken, we can also ask George. I believe the town side pays for it. I don't think it's coming out of UBNA's budget.
Oh,
And
wasn't
Tom,
okay.
can I
That's what I was trying.
Tom, can I ask you to ask it? Can you ask a question when you kind of wrap this up? Can you see if is this cost split based on the amount of students we send there, or is it split equally across all towns?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it per capita? Whether it's per town.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Is it per town or per capita? Right. Okay.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
But so everyone understand the increase from last year to fiscal year 22 is very small. It's only maybe 45 to 50,000. Yeah, it's a much
maybe
smaller
that's
amount.
why I didn't show up last year.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point. But yeah, go ahead, Tom. Ask him, and then see what you get. You can email everyone, and then if we need to call him, we will.
I will.
Okay.
And it's right. I mean, it's just 19 to 20, it went up $30,000, $443 to $479, and then all of a sudden it jumps up $200,000 last year. So I don't know whether or not there was end of year stuff after our budgeting that came in, a surcharge or whatever because of COVID related expenses or mandates from the state or some kind of new calculation like they've done with the charter schools for students. I just don't know if there's anybody to speak to that. There's no notes on there for how it was submitted.
And
It
I
doesn't say
think
who.
you're right. I think George pays. I mean, the finance department pays the bill. So I mean, really,
Okay.
Bill Yugner's like, I can't help you. I don't know, but
SCRSD
definitely.
department. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It says annual
Anything-
assessment. That's all it says on the front page.
Right. I've seen the previous invoice from the school to the town, and then a copy goes to. It still goes to Seth Ferguson, but I've seen the
Sure.
invoice and say this is how much you owe us. That's it. There's really no explanation. One line item. This is what you owe,
Yeah.
and then it's issued to our finance department and CC to AdCom. So that's all we got.
All right. I'll have an
one
answer
line.
for you by next week.
Okay.
If there's anything drastic, if I talk to Steve, anything drastic, I'll let everybody know whether or not we want to add them to the agenda at some point, or
Fair enough.
how do we get that guy in.
Right. Yeah. And then anything else?
Yeah,
I
real
don't have anything
quick.
else.
Go ahead.
Kind of along the same train of thought. I'll if there's anything drastic that we need to know about with the utilities increase or decrease as it pertains to solar, I'll reach out. I asked Chris Gallagher to ballpark it for me. Is it hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? My kind of thought is it'll be in the low thousands in terms of, I guess the long and short of it, I know a lot of you were on last week, is that they miscalculated for the town, especially as it pertains to the education, what they were allotted based on what we get for solar credits, which drops our utilities cost. It was miscalculated over the last couple of years. So our understanding is that's, we saved money because they overcalculated our solar credits. We're not going to have to pay any of that back, is my understanding, but we might see a utilities cost increase because we get a solar credit decrease because they're calculating it correctly now. So we reached out to, Bill doesn't really know how to calculate that, and to be honest, neither do I. I mean, I'm sure I can figure it out, but we reached out to Chris Gallagher, who, has a little bit better handle on all these things. He should be able to give us, again, whether it's, an issue of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. If it's anything sizable, I'll reach out and let everybody know. If it's not, we'll just let it be what it is, because it won't really affect the budget in one way or another. But I just want to let you know that, we're waiting on some answers. If they come and they're a big impact, I'll reach out and maybe we'll have to talk about it and see what we need to do. But I just want to let you know we're waiting on some answers there.
Good enough. Good enough. Earlier today, there was an email from Bill Keegan, so I forwarded it to everyone. So you might want to look at it. That deals with the revenue and expenses from the town side. I believe year-to-date numbers. Somebody asked a week ago. So the most recent report.
Larry, is that different from what Marie sent us? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe so, because the email from Bill said this is the latest, fresh off the press. So
okay.
I assume it's different. I didn't have time to cross-reference it, but
yeah, Larry, I had asked for that. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we just got it before the meeting. Yeah.
Right.
Those numbers are freshly cooked.
Yeah, it came out like 4 o'clock late in the day. So
Right.
Because of you, Dennis, we all have the latest version. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Anything else? Okay. If not, go ahead, Bernard.
Oh, sorry, not just food for thought, and it goes back to what Bill had said. Actually, the information that he sent to all of us, again, I found it pretty actually useful to look at the master budget that he sent us, especially the last portion of that page. In other words, where the breakdown, why totals are broken down. At the end of the day, when you look at, call it a $40+ million budget, and again, this is not taking into account the portion that I mentioned at the beginning. This is without their benefits and pension. Call it $40+ million. When you take 80+% of 40 million, that's $32+ million. And by Bill quickly also mentioning up front that most of the employees are part of a union, my point is that when we are trying to see, let's say, how to be efficient, this is my opinion, unless we are envisioning structural changes, everything else, in my opinion, is immaterial, because really, at the end of the day, the town total budget is 80+ million, going at 2 to 3% every year up. In the next 5 to 6 years, I know I keep repeating that, we're gonna be reaching 100+ million easily. So to me, it's like a business. Unless we are trying to see how to change structurally how we run things. I know this is COVID time, so it's difficult, but really the fact that most of what we have here, I mean, let's face it, is untouchable. Anything else, in my opinion, we're talking about pennies to change. Anything short than structural changes will lead us to always 2 to 3+ million of absolute dollars every year. And again, like the compounding effect, will be surpassing $100 million very, very soon. So this is just my take, Larry. In other words, I just remember in the past, we used to spend so much time, budget process, trying to find a penny here, a penny there. But like every company, to me, anything that's short of structural changes, taking into account what we cannot change. And I really say that, honestly, now that I've been in the outcome for so long, anything short than that, Larry, to me, will not change the needle, if you see what I mean. That's my take.
I hear you, Bernard. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Bernard is probably going to hear sick of hearing my echo. We've echoed each other for like the last 7 years regarding the $100 million threshold for a town budget. That's creeping closer and closer. You just mentioned 32 million, 80%. Well, 32 million is where we were for the total school budget just 7 years ago, as we just saw in his chart back in 2014. That's how quickly 20% can creep up. So going back to the CIP portion, I think it was the first question I had for Bill, was regarding that extra bus, relating it back to what the police were asking for when they wanted to rotate their cars. I don't know, Larry, you'll be the representative for that meeting. Do you know when the meeting is supposed to be for CIP? Is it first weekend in March?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the committee, you'll be the only person speaking for that. I don't know, but I still think my proposal of a 3 and 3 as opposed to lump sum 4, as we're still trying to come out of COVID. I don't know what the other items are going to be in the CIP budget proposal. I don't know. I mean, I've been there when there's been like extra money and everybody gets what they want, and there's been times where it's lean and like about 5 or 6, 7 different department requests get chopped. So I know where everybody's trying to be lean and mean. I think they might string it out for 2 years. He seems to be, I wouldn't say condescending, reticent, but approving. If that's where it had to go, he can make it work that way. And I think this would smooth it out, over the next 2 years as opposed to a big lump this year.
Tom, I was kind of glad you asked that question, because usually those are things we're going to try to, I think the CIP committee will work it out, but you definitely presented a different option, and Bill Yuchner seems, he's not against it. He'll make it work if that's the case. So basically, I do not disagree with your suggestions. So let's just leave it at that. Okay. And really, it's really the CIP committee will discuss this, and it's going to be live on TV, so everybody can watch it.
Sure. I think Dan was in those meetings, anyways. You and Dan were together in the meetings when he brought it up. I'm sure.
No. What meeting? The CIP? There was no CIP.
No. On the school committee meeting.
Oh, actually, Brad.
The meeting you had with Bill then. Yeah.
Yes, we correct. We talked about it, and Brad Poulter was part of it too. But go ahead, Dan.
Oh, Brad, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. I just want to kind of echo what Bernard said, but I do really want to echo something that Jack brought up last year, which is, none of this particularly matters unless there's a tangible effect on, not essentially lowering taxes, but, I think I remember Jack saying you can't take that Shaw's or Stop and Shop and buy food with it. So, kind of what Bernard says is when, we're penny pinching here, if it's going to save, the average taxpayer $1, what are we doing here, right? But, when we get into these big ticket items, especially in the CIP budget, where, you will see those increases, let's just all be cognizant of the fact that some families still are struggling. Now, a year from now, we might not be in this position. Things might be a little better. We could buy a couple buses, whatever. But, I'm just remembering what Jack said last year and tying it into what Bernard said, some families still are struggling. Foxborough might be a little better off than some other towns and cities, but, just something to keep in the back of your mind. That's it.
I hear you, Dan.
Off the soapbox.
I understand, and I know what everyone is talking about. So this is something that I'm sure at the CIP meeting, it's going to be there's going to be a lot to discuss. And
I plan on watching everybody squirm.
Yeah,
it'll be great.
Once I have the date, but once I confirm it, I'll let you guys know so you can all watch it on cable if you want. Okay. Anything else?
All good.
All good. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second. Okay. Tom motion.
I'll second.
Dan second. So roll call. Bernard. Okay.
Yes.
Jack.
Yes.
Good. Dan.
Aye.
Good. Paul. Okay. Good. Thank you. I see you. Dennis. Good. Tom.
Yeah.
Good. John Mahoney.
Yes, thank you.
Brett.
Yes, thank you.
And me. Yes. All right, guys. See you guys next week. Good night.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Larry.
Everybody.
Good night. Good night.